pretty pro forma. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's carried. Item 12, the Central City Biannual Report, January to June 2024. Would like to be moved by Councillor Goff and seconded by Councillor Johansson. And I'll let John's going to come and give us a bit of a report. Talk to your report. Maybe even a presentation. Have you got a?
We do.
Yes.
We'll just set the technology up a sec. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, we can't. Sorry. No, so we can't.
It's not what, that one's not working at the moment.
We connect that one in.
Oh, so we can't see it.
We should have sent it in advance, so no.
We can circulate it to
Yeah.
councillors.
Right.
Might be just talking.
Sorry, we
great.
can't put the presentation up.
All right. I'll just go without.
We just have
pictures
to
then.
fly blind.
All right. Hello everyone, today we're presenting the latest Central City Biannual Report, and that outlines regeneration activity January to June this year. I'll go through the essentials today. The actual report and its attachments have all the details. Well, the first slide would have been about our pedestrian footfall data, which is back online, and that tracks activity in key locations as part of regenerating the Central City. Consistent growth in footfall is key, and we saw 3.5% growth compared to the same time last year, and Q2 grew by 12%, which is significant progress. Peaks in footfall do come during major events like Brennan Circus, Sail GP, Te Rama Mai, and those peaks significantly boost the city centre's economy and vibrancy, so there's a strong case to continue to invest in these events. Moving on to the economy, first we acknowledge there have been tough times for businesses and the public this year. Spending was slow and only grew 1.4%, but there are still positives to draw. We saw more tourists in the central city, especially over the summer. Overseas visitors spent 24% more compared to the same time last year, and that made up for slower spending by other demographics. More international flight services have made a positive difference. With new venues taking shape, we're optimistic this growth will continue. Regarding commercial development, final delivery of projects has been slower, but construction and consenting continues at a high rate. So as economic conditions improve, we're optimistic delivery can improve as well. Projects like Te Kaha and the Court Theatre are also well on track. Onto housing, our residential program keeps track of the population and construction in the city centre. We're still waiting on figures from the latest census. We expect to have those in October, and that can indicate what population growth we've seen this year. There's much to be positive about housing-wise, considering the high interest rates and economic struggles we've seen across the country. It's encouraging that the number of homes completed in the period was close to the average we have seen since 2018. And consenting for homes was well above average. So that makes us optimistic that construction can pick up when market conditions improve. When compared to Christchurch as a whole, the city centre's housing market seemed less affected by market conditions, which is encouraging. So in the slides, there would have been a chart showing housing delivery has remained steady in the city centre long term, while district-wide there was a slight slowdown this year. And another positive outcome, the South East Central Neighbourhood Plan was completed during the period and just approved by you all today.
Yep.
And that's a positive outcome because this can support more housing, mixed use and investment in the South East area, which has high potential. To support the plan, our Live in Places program also delivered 2 murals, and we're planning more streetscape projects as well. And looking deeper at some other programs, there was visible progress on barrier sites. Only 14 sites remain on the list, and 12 of those have plans in place for repair or development. With vacant sites, the number of abandoned vacant sites fell by half over the last 3 years. This is due partly to sites being developed, but also legitimate temporary uses being established.
That's good.
One example is being the notable improvements we've seen to temporary car parks. Through enforcement action and the vacant site rating, car parks have turned into much better facilities for users. And this has helped in making only 1 in 3 vacant sites being liable for the city vacant rating this year. Last year it was closer to 45%. In support of our vacant sites program, Alive in Place has also partnered with the owner of a Colombo Street site and turned it into a temporary public space with an eye-catching mural. Ending with the Central City Noise Program, an update report was presented to the Council in June. The program is moving towards completing the initial non-regulatory work that was agreed to at the start of the program. So that includes the initial acoustic assessment of a music venue, publishing our educational web pages, and our Meet Your Neighbours event at Space Academy. Next steps are staying connected with key venues, supporting relationships between venues and residents, and keeping track of any noise control issues and responding promptly. There will be another update on the noise program, including on the plan change early next year. And we'd like to end by noting the contributions of our other agencies and programs and our city-making partners. More details on their work can be found in the report attachment. And that is it. Happy to take any questions.
Well, that's incredible. You've just given us a romp right through the city. Fantastic. No, and really, it's a pretty optimistic report, actually, in my view.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to wait for that data to coming out in October. So we've got a few questions. Councillor Johansson, Donovan.
Thank you. I just had two questions. The first is trying to understand more about the Central City illumination strategy that Christchurch NZ is doing. Have we seen a copy of that as council, and is that something that's going to come to us? I'm just trying to understand what Christchurch NZ's role is and why they'd be delivering that rather than be something that council would be doing.
Is it the street lighting talking about?
Yes, correct. Councils that have been around for a while will remember that we've discussed this previously as a council, and there was a request to have a lighting strategy for the city, but that never progressed. So I guess a little bit puzzled why Christchurch NZ are now doing it.
Do we hear a response?
So Christchurch NZ initiated that sort of blue skies thinking piece of work last year. It's still, I think it's in the process of just being finalised now. So we've seen drafts of it, but in terms of taking things forward, I understand that they're going to initiate a piece of work to draw council and other potential partners into that work. So that's the only advice I've got at this stage.
Okay, I mean, I guess we're paying for it because we're paying Christchurch NZ. So
It might be a question for CNZ.
maybe we need to just get an understanding of kind of, where this fits into the letter of expectation and the stuff we've asked them to do. I mean, I'd be really keen to get briefed on it if it was possible, just to understand the impact and potential of it. But, I'm not against it. I think it's a good idea, but I'm just concerned that the resources that are going into it, without us actually knowing what the scope of the work is or will be.
Okay, so
We'll get some advice from Christchurch NZ and perhaps ask
And
them to
the second question I had is I just looked at McDonald's has a net worth of 206 billion, and I'm kind of struggling to understand why we're funding one of the wealthiest companies in the world to improve their own property. Is there any sort of criteria that we have around the need for funding going to people that need it versus companies that already have, significant value and profit, and why are we paying for that?
Well, when we choose site owners to partner with for an Enliven project, they do need to put in a certain amount of financial contribution themselves. We ensure that they at least cover the costs for ground improvements, which is the same level that we'd expect from any vacant site owner. In this case, McDonald's were willing to cover those costs, and for that reason, we thought they were a appropriate owner to partner with in this case. They covered the fair costs that would expect from any other site owner for the project. So that was our rationale. Yeah.
and I suppose it means at least you got the work done. So, Councillor Donovan?
Oh, thank you. Very interesting report. I just wondered if you could expand a little bit on plans around Cathedral Square, because I couldn't see too much in the report itself.
I think yesterday's announcement was probably expected, but perhaps not the result we thought of. So this report was written well before those announcements. We have, as staff, initiated some discussions around some of the consequences around the Grand, the square's actual physical state, and that will be coming to you, I suppose, when those further discussions are completed. But at this stage, it's still a work in progress. It's probably fair to say.
Thank you.
But our team is
Oh,
being
just
drawn
saying
into that. If that's any,
that we will come back, planning to come back with some advice around that.
Situation. Yep. We're all aware of it. Councillor Skendra?
Yeah, thank you. And you can't have too many strategies, can you, eh? With regards to the intensification in the central city, do we have an idea of private ownership versus rental? Because if you look at, there are now in Florence and other places throughout Europe, there are now being bans on Airbnb and rental rather than ownership, because the rentals are now becoming affordable to the local communities. With us, we don't really want to get there, but do we have an idea, because the high house prices in many European countries are seen as a failure of the economy. So we have nothing protecting anything in this country, and we're just creating a whole lot of landlords, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing if they're foreign owners, but I'm just wondering, do we have an idea of the ownership, private ownership versus Airbnb versus...
this picks up a question that Councillor Johansson raised 6 months ago. We are still waiting for that census data, which have a lot more information about housing tenure and that sort of thing. So when that's available, we will provide that. So
It's October this year.
it should be, but the census data is released in tranches, so I'm not quite sure which tranche it's in, but October is the next big release. So we'll let
So
you,
how will you inform us of that? Will you put it through as a memo, or we're keen to know?
we can take advice on how that's best to
Okay.
provide to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Good question. Councillor Fields?
It's not about Banks Peninsula.
Really?
That would be out of scope of the report. So,
Yeah.
first of all, like I really commend the work that you do. Like I've seen it firsthand, and I'm really a big fan, and I appreciate it. So Councillor Donovan has preempted my question a little bit, but look, obviously we know what happened in this. Happened yesterday. New information we found out. But around the square, like all the big ticket items around the square in terms of framing it seem to have largely been completed. So I'm just two questions. Like, are there any kind of I don't want to say barrier sites because that's a specific thing, but are there any sort of sites that don't have around the square like a clear future pathway? And secondly, what are the tools and Mary sort of touched on this before with her comments, but like what are the tools in the kit bag that we have to try and enhance that entire space? Because it is a huge, and the building in the middle of it obviously is significant, but it is a massive space and just crying out for some kind of unified
Do you want to
program.
answer?
Yeah.
So
think-
we will come back with a conference rather than put them on the spot now. There is a
Sorry for putting you on the spot.
Yeah,
It's quite a big question.
there's a plan to have a sort of coordinated response across our teams and council and come back with some advice.
I can answer the first part of that. I mean, across the sites that are around the perimeter of the square, the owners all have got intentions, but a lot of it has been about the waiting game in terms of what happens in terms of the public realm and the building in the middle, of course.
But I mean, it's starting to look fantastic, I think. I mean, in my view. Thank you.
Councillor Barber?
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. Just about the street art destination development. You've got here that the street art destination program was finalised by Christchurch NZ and presented to council as part of the LTP considerations. Is that different from our funding of Watch This Space?
That's one and the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Kelly championed on that.
Yes, you did too. Councillor Kewen?
Yeah, it would be on the central city numbers. It would be good to get comparisons to other parts of the city. like it says, with the spend, I think, visitor spend up 24 is great, but the overall spend's only just up, which means the local spend's down considerably, and to know why, and are we part of the barrier, or is something else? So if it's something we can be doing to make the world a better place, and then, because there's all the events you look at that are on to create atmosphere and bring people in, and you can see the footfall numbers are really, really high, but how many of them are actually spending money would be a nice stat to see, because some of the numbers coming through, like, and you log nearly 1 million people coming through for Scape, but is there 1 million people in town, and Scape just happens to be on at the same time, or did 923,000 people come in to see Scape, in which case it's an incredible investment, if that's true. But so just those sort of things, and then some of the event stuff where they had a particular target, and then it's well below, does that carry on, or do we try something else? And sometimes they can be not met because of the weather as well. Yeah, but comparing to other parts of the city would be really, really good.
Oh,
Yeah.
that would be helpful. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So there's information on the website. We've got Councillor McClellan on Zoom. Welcome, Jake. So yes, we've got some information on the website that John's going to circulate. So good questions. We've got a mover and a seconder. Is there any debate? Did you want to speak to it, Aaron? No. Councillor Henson?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to acknowledge the work that staff. I think this report's really good, so acknowledge the work that staff have done on this. It's like we're given a lot of information, which is really, really good, and presented in a way that's really easy to understand. I do just want to pick up on that concern about what's happening with housing in this city centre, and I am a little bit concerned just waiting for the census data, which will probably be out of date by the time we get it, with all the new developments that are going on. And I wonder if there's another mechanism we need to start thinking about as a city, just to watch what's happening in that space. Obviously, we've passed some relatively new rules around Airbnb, so maybe there's a way that we can capture some of that data. But yeah, I do share the concern that the central city is becoming unaffordable and gentrified, and we do need to be really mindful of the social impact that some of this new development is having on our city and on our communities. But I just wanted to acknowledge the good work that staff have done, and yeah, I do appreciate getting the detailed and extensive information.
Thank you. Good points. Councillor Scandrett?
Yeah, look, I share the concern. I think it's a bigger question than just Christchurch, and if we as a country just keep picking it off in bits and pieces, we'll get nowhere. I think that this country, we're selling our land. There are smaller, some of our Pacific neighbours, small countries don't allow that. You can only lease land, and we're just selling it willy-nilly, and not even just land, it's just buildings. And it's not a positive, I think, in the long run. So I think somehow, through the Mayoral Forum or whatever, we've got to try and get legislation, or one of the political parties or central government or whatever, to start looking at changing that, because it's about affordability, and it is not affordable any way, shape or form you look at it. And it's being driven by, I believe, one of those mechanisms that is driving it is foreign ownership. And we've got to turn around and change that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Goff, did you want to? Right. All right. I'll put the motion to receive that excellent report. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's carried. Thanks so much. Sorry that we couldn't see the presentation. Next time. That takes us through to item 13, which is the transport